Now, just press the button.
All right, I think we're live. Welcome to Live Coding Happy Hour for, I always have to check, it's April 21st already. I feel like it was March, like just yesterday. My name is Josh Nerius. I'm a developer evangelist here at ServiceNow, and go to developer.servicenow.com for resources, free instances, training, all sorts of good stuff, developer events. And with me today is...
I'm Dave Slusher. I'm also a developer evangelist. Josh and I work on the same team in the platform business unit at ServiceNow. And this week, Chuck, often our third co-host, is too busy. He can't join us. So it's you and me, and this really is all Josh. It was up to me. We would have a miserable show this week. But we're going to continue forward with the Meetup.com stuff that we were doing 2 weeks ago. And just actually, even before we get started with that, a little administrivia here. So we, just because of the knowledge preparation, we've been on kind of a bi-weekly schedule because we've got so much going on. It's been hard to even carve out the hour a week to do this every week. So we're not going to do a show next week. We're going to do a show the Friday right before Knowledge 17 and CreatorCon. And what we're going to do with that one is we're going to do a CreatorCon preview show, and we hope to get Jason McKee, who's one of the main organizers of CreatorCon, on to just kind of talk about it, what's upcoming and kind of what we're looking forward to and some of the neat challenges, and find some way to bring some coding into that as well. So that's what's upcoming next week. And then after Knowledge, we hope to get back on our weekly schedule. And then we have this backlog of things we want to do that have been kind of on ice for the last, how long? 2 months? More than 2 months.
Yeah, it's been a while. And I'm really excited to get back to it too, because no joke, we've started a list of these things in our tool that we keep track of stuff. We've got this whole backlog of ideas. And I'm just really looking forward to actually getting to dig into some of the more challenging things that maybe require a little bit more prep time. So
at this point, we are idea rich and time poor. So
this is absolutely the truth.
All right. What are you drinking today, Josh?
So today I have a Revolution Brewing Galaxy Hero. I think I actually had this on Live Coding a few weeks ago. I still had some of it in my fridge. It's usually pretty good. What do you got?
I don't remember if this is the Sweetwater I had last time. I've got the Hash Session IPA. There's another, so in this mixed 12-pack, I've got 5 different kinds. And the one I wanted to have, I realized I don't have a cold one, so I had to throw that in the fridge. But this is the one I'm going to have today. I think this might be the one I had last time as well. So it's going to be a lot of Sweetwater for me because I bought this big mixed pack of them. But I like them all. There's Sweetwater IPA and the 420 Extra Pale Ale, which I've said before is the Sweetwater 420 is essentially my Bud Light. It's like everything has just kind of moved up a little bit. That's now like my floor.
Like if that's your Bud Light, that's a pretty nice base to start from. So
it's reasonably ubiquitous, and I can kind of stand to drink it after I've kind of craft beerized my palate. So
it's actually showing up in more places around here too. So I actually pick up some 420 once in a while, some Sweetwater 420.
Already.
So so let's see. Did we talk about what we're gonna actually do this week?
I very briefly mentioned it. So what we did previously, we kind of surprised ourselves by getting as far as we did last time with the integration of a ServiceNow instance with Meetup.com. Right. So the thing that you're working on, well, you talk about it. It's your project. So why am I talking?
I suppose I could do that. So let me share my screen and turn off my camera. So so last week what we did, we built an app that allows us to publish Unconference events out to Meetup.com. And so this is a very real use case. This is something that we're actually going to be using on the ground in Orlando in a couple of weeks here for CreatorCon. And the goal is to have a simple ServiceNow app that somebody can go into from an iPad, and they can put these events in, and these events will just show up magically, but not really magically, on Meetup.com. So we got all the way through that. It actually is working, but it's still not quite production ready. So that's really what we're going to go through today is just I've got a laundry list of things to do, and we're just going to work through that. So
really, this is less of a lot of times what we do on these shows is kind of exploratory. A lot of times we're not sure if it is going to work or where we're exactly where we're heading. This time is really more of a fit and finish that we're kind of work that we're doing here.
Yep, absolutely. So, and on that fit and finish topic, I actually spun up an instance called CC17 Unconference where we're going to do this. So it's no longer a local instance, getting a little bit closer to production ready there. I'm going to go up to meetup.com now and just show you what this thing looks like. Also, by the way, in true live coding fashion, maybe the actual code won't break, but there's a good chance that UPS is going to show up at my door and the dog is going to go berserk. So okay. I'm just warning y'all. Just warning y'all ahead of time. I usually try to avoid those deliveries on Fridays, but you just never know. So this is the Meetup event that we're actually posting to, and we have another test event, please ignore, out here. So I did a little bit of testing earlier, and I was just making sure that this thing actually works out there in this new CC17 Unconference instance, and it does. So we'll go out here and we'll create a session. We'll just create a second one to make sure. Whoops, let me actually bring up the right instance. That would probably be a good idea. So we'll go to our Unconference menu. We'll add a second session. We'll say Dave is running this. And this is going to be on the test event at 9:30 a.m. So we'll submit that. We'll give this a few seconds and we'll just, oh, it didn't even take a few seconds. It's already there. So things are still working. Things are all intact. So the first thing we want to do, let me pull up my Evernote doc here. I want to see what this thing looks like on iPad. So let me just pull up my simulator, because what I'm curious about is what the experience is going to be for somebody that's actually there and inputting this stuff. We don't want to just assume that this is going to work without issue. So give me one moment while I pull this over to that screen. Whoops. Hopefully. Come on. My iPad simulator has frozen, so let's give that just a moment.
Yeah, and if it doesn't come back, we can always skip it and move to the next item and come back to it later.
Yeah, worst comes to worst. The other thing I did is I actually have okay, here we go. Yeah, it has unfrozen. So we're going to go to CC17. I think we are. It's not taking my input. It doesn't like the keyboard. All right, so we might give up on this iPad idea pretty quickly. Let me kill the simulator and let's do this. I'm pretty sure that Chrome has a way that you can sort of look at something in a mobile view. So let's do that.
Is it similar to the service portal where it really it's kind of forcing to common dimensions?
Yeah, it should. Now there are some different things in ServiceNow. So there used to be this thing called tablet.do, and that would show up on a tablet, and then there's m.do, and I think that shows up on phones. The interesting thing here is that the tablet interface is now the full ServiceNow interface. That's no longer a special thing. The mobile interface is still a mobile interface, but the tablet interface is a full ServiceNow interface. So let me just toggle the modes here and see what we've got. So we've got our developer tools. So if we're in that mode, what I don't know is how to actually change between sizes. Here we go. Oh, cool. So we can go to iPad. I like this. All right. So we've got our interface. This is really small. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, cool.
So basically the iPad form factor at this point.
Yeah, this is the iPad form factor. So that's not too bad. I'm a little worried about it being too small, but I think that's reasonable. What I'm more interested in is if somebody's doing this from an iPhone. So let's take a look at an iPhone 6 Plus, for example. I think we need to go to m.do or $m.do.
I think it's $m.do.
Yeah. See, we are doing some exploration today that we didn't know we were going to do. So $m.do. Yeah. So here we go. So we've got our applications, and if I go and look for this, I see Service Portal. I see self-service. I see incident. What I don't see is the Unconference app. So I need to.
I did actually see it. There it is, right there.
Oh, it is. Oh, there it is. Okay, cool. So here we go. We've got some new scope operations. That's interesting. So execute operation on script includes this user list. So it looks like because we're doing this from mobile, it's actually introducing some new scope privileges, which is interesting. So these are here. Let's take a look at one of these. Here's the event. We can edit it. We can actually select the time. We can select the day. So this is pretty good. I mean, I haven't done anything and it's already good to go. I honestly thought I was going to have to add some menus for this, but I think this might be all that we need. So here's a new form, test from mobile. And we'll say that the presenter is Bob. And this is on the test event day at 9 a.m. And there we go. Let's go back over here and put this in normal view because we don't care about seeing meetup.com in small view. Come on. Is it going to automatically switch back? Good. Okay, so test from mobile. Everything's good there. So, but there's an issue, and that issue is we have two things at 9 a.m. Now, that's okay because the Unconference is going to have two zones. We're going to have zone A and zone B. So these are sort of like different areas where people can actually run sessions at the same time. But we want to do some validation to make sure that we don't go beyond that. So this is where I want to start actually making some modifications to the app. So let me go in here. Studio.do. And the first thing I want to do is I want to add a zone field to this table. Because we just need, We've apparently preserved the mobile view inside of Studio.
I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna have to look this up because I don't ever remember how you do this. How you unforce. Yeah, once you do that m.do, you give the sticky. I have to Google it honestly. ServiceNow turn off mobile view.
Yeah, that's kind of important. So let me see. If I just go to the main interface, what's going to happen?
No, that first doc I found is about disabling it completely.
See, we are finding things that people are going to find interesting. Because anybody else running into this or anybody else working on this is going to run into that same exact issue. What I can do just to make progress here is let me open up a different window with a different profile. So let me just do that. We're going to open this up in, I have a special dev program profile that I use so that we can make progress in a different window because we're going to have to keep going back and forth. Otherwise, I don't want to do that. So cc17 unconference.servicenow.com. And this is something that I really love about Chrome. So I use this extensively. I've tried to switch to other browsers before. Like I've tried to use Safari because I know it's supposed to be better for battery and things like that on a Mac. But having multiple user profiles in Chrome and being able to go back and forth between them is just so valuable. I love it. So let's wait for that to load and open up Studio.
All right, navpage.do /sysparm_device equals browser. I think returns you
sysparm device. Okay, that's an interesting.
Sysparm_device equals. Oh, actually, I think that takes you to UI14 equals doc type. That is cryptic.
That is a little cryptic. That would be.
All right. Well, so I'll keep that to the side. Next time you want to go back to that, I'll refresh you because the odds of us remembering are low.
Yeah, I will definitely.
For obvious reasons, it's weird.
I will definitely not remember that. So, okay, we're going to add our zone choice field. This zone is going to just be two zones. We're going to have zone A and zone B. So I've added the field. Let me pull up the form. And this is a dev instance. It's not very fast, but okay, so here's the form. I'm going to put the zone after the time because I think that makes sense. I'll get rid of this extra thing. I'll add some choices. I don't use the form designer very much, but zone. I'm just going to say A and B. And we can always rename those later if we need to. All right, so there we go. So now we'll go and take a look at it. And we've got our zone, we've got zone A, we've got zone B, and what we can now do is we can start to do some validation. So what I want to do is I want to say that when somebody selects a time, I want to say that on the change of the time field, I'm going to go out there and look for things that are happening at that same time in that same zone that are active. So we've got a couple of things that we need to look up. And if they're there, then we're just going to warn people. I'm not going to abort it because I still want, basically I want the person submitting this to have the final say, but I want to warn them that, hey, there's something already going on. So the general approach there, you could do a glide record query, which is probably a bad idea. And actually this is a scoped app, so it's not even going to work. So what we need to do is we need to do some glide Ajax. So I always do this. ServiceNow, glide Ajax. I think
I had to do some glide Ajax, and it was amazing how little I remembered of any of it.
And it's so weird because it's not difficult. It's just different enough that I find myself having to look this stuff up every time. So, all right, let's do this. We'll add a script include, and we're just going to say session validator. Session validator, and we need to extend abstract Ajax processor, and I think it's going to actually be.
If you click client callable, I think it'll do that automatically.
Oh, will it? Oh, that's nice. I don't even know if I knew that was a thing. So that's pretty.
I think that is the totality of what client callable does. Is change the prototype.
So I've known that you had to do client callable in order to make a client callable. I just didn't know it actually did the prototype. I'm always in there fighting with the code. So I guess that shows how much I know about this.
Like I said, for the first time in years, I actually sat down with this stuff probably within a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
So what we want to do, we want to look for sessions at that time in that zone. So session exists. Whatever, naming things is such a pain. I'm just going to say that. Session exists. And what we're going to do, so we need to do a couple of things. We need to determine the zone. So we want this.get parameter. So var zone equals this.get parameter, and we'll say this is going to be sysparm zone. We're also going to check for the time. So we're going to say sysparm time. And then we also need to check for the day because this is all based on the day. Equals this dot get parameter. All right, so there we go. Now we need to actually look it up. So we're going to say var gr session. Notice I am not just saying gr. I'm actually remembering to give it a useful name from the beginning. Let's get the name of the table. So it's SN Unconference session.
All right, so we have a question that I'll kind of talk to while you're typing the boilerplate here. So Jace Benson is asking why you would use glide Ajax versus scripted REST API. And so I'll tell you, I was in a very similar situation here, and the main reason to not use a scripted REST API and to use glide Ajax is that what we're going to be doing is hooking this into a client script. And it's just easier to do. Everything about this is going to be easier to hook into, like the on change of the client script.
Yeah, exactly. And you certainly could do this in a scripted REST API, but then you're having to deal with calling that scripted REST API with jQuery or something else.
Right. If you want to use automatic built-in ServiceNow stuff, glide Ajax is already there to be used, but it is constrained. Right. And so you have a kind of a fairly narrow box that you can use from the client side script. But on the upside, because it is constrained, you kind of have fewer choices to make. You have, so for this, like if we were doing an arbitrary thing called by someone else, there's no chance we would be doing this as glide Ajax. Like the only time to do glide Ajax is when the only consumer of it is going to be the client script on the front end of the UI. In my case, I wanted a thing for my CreatorCon session that would do a client-side rejection of a submit, right? I wanted to click submit and I wanted it to fail so that I could do that for the automated testing. And I ended up having to do a glide Ajax type thing to make that happen. And that was why I used glide Ajax for the first time in a long time. It's just simpler in that particular use case. And that is honestly about the one use case nowadays I would even say that matters, right?
Yeah, that would be accurate. And one of the things you can do, I mean, if you're going to be writing a lot of logic that is reusable, you might have two script includes. So you have a script include that really does your core logic, and then you call that from your client callable script include. So the client callable script include is really just a proxy for your glide Ajax call, and then the rest of your logic can be reused by something else. You could expose it in a scripted REST API, whatever the case is. There's an extra step there, but you do have the opportunity to maintain reusability that way if you need to. So so at this point, we're going to do the actual on change script. So we're going to say, so here's the question. This should probably be, I'm going to have to run this logic multiple times because this is going to, I'm going to primarily trigger it for now off of the time change. So time changes. Because the problem is if you start to adjust the other things, say you set the time and then you change the day, you would want this to run in potentially multiple places. I'm just going to worry about this here. We could also just do this on submit, but I want to kick the information up there before they click submit, because by the time they click submit, then it's kind of too late. So let's do a glide Ajax. Yikes, there we go. Oh, my indentation is weird by default. And the pattern here, so we want to actually call the script include. So in this case, that script include is session validator. We are going to say that the name is session exists. And this is the one I also forget often, is it's add param. Okay, there we go. ga.add param. It's not add parameter, it's add param. Session exists. We're going to add the day, date, and zone. The really, really boring stuff. And that's going to be gform.getValue day. And let me just copy and paste this because I can fill these in a little bit quicker. Day, time.
Time and zone.
Zone. All right, so now we need to actually call the thing. So we're going to do a get XML. I'm just going to copy this and fill the things in. This is probably why I never remember it, because I tend to copy and paste the code and just replace the things. And if I actually typed it, maybe I would remember how it works. And I'm just going to do this inline because we don't need to declare the function. We can do an anonymous function inside of here. So function response. The answer is response alert answer. And for now, that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to alert the answer so we can see what it is, make sure this thing works. And then if we're actually getting the answer that we think we are, we'll go in and do something else with it to add information to the form. So,
all right. So I was, let's flip back before we test this. Can we flip back to the script include for 1 second? Because I was doing some administrivia. And so just for my own thing, we're going to say it says true means there is a session in this zone at this time.
Yep. In this day, in this time, in this zone.
Okay.
So all three must match. And then if that's true, we can return true. And actually what I could even do to make this even shorter is return that directly. I don't need to do an if statement. So that will return true or false. All right, so go back here. We will add this. Let me just pull up a list of sessions. Let's check for one. So we have one on the test event day at 9:30. So it doesn't matter which one we select.
Go in
it's
and
going to fire.
go in and make sure that you set a zone, because they're gonna have no zones right now, right? Or you don't care.
Let's check. Let me add the zone field here. And it does matter. Yeah, none of these are going to have zones. So let me set zone A on that one. I'll set zone A on that one and zone B on this one. So this is actually kind of perfect because ultimately we want to warn and basically give them an error if there's something in both zones, but only give them like an info message if there's something in zone A. So we'll see what happens there. Let's reload this. Let's add a new one. And we'll say, you know what? I have to select this first. So this is why this is a problem. We're going to have to select that first. I'll say 9 a.m. And it says false. So,
Tuesday
but that's on Tuesday. So let me change the test event. Let me go like that. 9 a.m. And there is. So it's actually coming back true or false. 9:30, there is not. 9, there is.
And set that back to A, and let's go ahead and cycle between. So if you do A, it should be true in both cases, right?
Yeah, A should be true in both cases. Yep, so there's true and true.
Okay.
So we're good. And then if I select a different day entirely,
everything should be false, right?
Everything should be false. Yep. Yeah, so
okay.
we're good there. So that appears to be working, but you see the issue there, which is that if I change the time before other things, then that thing is going to it's not going to fire, and we're not going to know.
So here's something that I'm going to admit that I don't remember how to do. How do you factor a code? Is it a UI script that you would factor that into if you wanted to have a common function called by a lot of different things?
So yeah, you could do a UI script. The trouble with the UI script at times can be that, well, you can define a UI script for a table, I think, can't you? Or can you not?
I think you can. So if you say that there's a UI script on session,
right,
that might solve your thing. Is if we put the logic in one time.
You know what? No, you can't put it on a table. So UI script is just out there.
It's just going to be like a global.
So that's not ideal. What we can do, though, is we can actually do an onload script and put the function definition in the onload script, I think. So let me do that.
So essentially, you're going to monkey patch the page on a load.
Oops, I don't want a script include.
Is that right?
Yeah. I don't want a script include, and I did not want to close my studio window there. Got a little bit excited with my keyboard shortcuts. All right, let's open that back up. So client script again. And we'll say function definitions, for lack of a better thing to call it. On the session table, we're going to say the UI type is all, because we actually want to make sure this is something that has gotten me in trouble before. If you don't select all, it may not run everywhere you want it to. So it's not necessarily good. So this is where we can actually define that function. So let me open up the other client script now. Copy that out. So for the time changes. Now, this is going to, I'm just thinking through this. So this runs asynchronously, as it must, because we're in a scoped app. We can't do synchronous Ajax. That's fine, though. That's fine, because we can just trigger this, and it's, you know, you could, I feel like you could theoretically get into a race condition where somebody could try to submit this before this thing even processes, but I doubt that's going to be the case, especially on a tablet. So we're going to call this field validations. How about that? I mean, that's kind of nondescript, but we'll just go with that for now. And we'll just call that in the client script. I think this will work.
And since your script that you're defining is doing all the calling of gform, all you have to do is invoke it. You don't have to do any lookup of anything from any of your calling functions. You're just going to invoke it.
Yep,
it's
exactly.
like it by itself, that function has everything it needs to run.
Yep. Yeah, and that's not always the case in a lot of things you work on, but in this case, so that's interesting. Field validations is not defined. I wonder, you know why? I know why. It's because this is in the onload function that we're defining it. So we're actually we actually want to intentionally go outside of a function declaration. Usually it's a good practice to do that because you want all the code
because of
to be in
scoping.
its own scope. Yep.
Ah.
Oh, really? Missing function declaration for onload.
How about this? Do we need to perhaps, so kind of Control Z back to here. Do we maybe need to take that function as a closure and add it to like the document object or something? Do we have to do something weirder than what we're doing here?
Yeah, that actually might be what we have to do. I wonder if we have access to window. Because can I do this?
Maybe not.
Window.field validations. I feel like there's probably something in place that's blocking this. And probably for good reason. But we'll try it anyway. So let's reload. It didn't like that. Can we do... Well, so I absolutely hate what I'm about to do. But for the purposes... I hate
the word
this.
"but" made me laugh, right?
I hate this so much. It's hard to even explain how much I hate this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this block of code into my client script, and I'm just going to have the same client script like 4 times. And this is horrible. I don't like it. I'm committing right now to investigating a better solution.
Yeah,
but
I'm going to take this as an action item.
Yeah.
To research how we can factor this out. And this may actually require bringing some big guns in that know a little bit more than we do about this. I can think of one in particular that would be my first stop to ask about this.
I mean, so sorry, let's try one more thing. Let's try the UI script route. Let's try the UI script route because I want to see, I want to see if we can get a reusable function into our scope here. I'll just call that yikes. All right, let me go back and recopy that. Scope UI script does not match the default pattern. Yeah, that's fine. We're just declaring it. So now we'll go back.
And also be aware, if you go back up there, it is a scoped name. So I think we're gonna have to call it via the scope name.
Okay.
I'm not sure on that.
Well, let's try it the one way, and then if it doesn't work, we'll add the scope prefix to it and try that. So we got field validations here. Save it. Let's try running this. Reload. Reference error, field validations is not there. So testing your theory, let's add sn unconf to the beginning. Dot field validations. And I kind of feel like it may not be loaded automatically. I'm not sure about that. It doesn't seem to like it.
Whoa. Hold on a second. Reference error. Unconf is not defined function.
Yeah.
Can you go back to the client script? Send unconf. So, yeah, it looks like the scoping actually doesn't exist there.
Let's do what anybody else is probably going to do. They're going to type in scoped client scripts or scoped UI script. You know, there's too much to read there. So I want to make progress. I'm going to go back to my horrible workaround, and we will come back to this because this is important. This is something that there needs to be a better way.
Yeah, this is definitely a thing that that we can work on offline. because it's just ridiculous to have the same script. Like for every change you make, you're going to make 4 times. So,
Right. Yeah, that's far from what we would want in terms of code reusability. It's not a best practice. And
I'm going to go farther. It's a worse practice.
Yeah, it's a terrible practice.
It's the worst practice. But it's the worst practice other than not working.
Exactly. So we're going to change this. So right now it's time changes. I'm just going to do an insert and stay for date. I guess we're calling it day. There we go. So day changes, insert and stay. And then zone changes, insert and stay. Oh, this is so bad. I hate it. I hate it so much. Go back. And while we're doing this, how are we on comments? Does anybody have any tidbits for us?
Jace had a suggestion for possibly a way that we could do it in the onload, but I think I think that ship has sailed. I don't really think either of us wants to burn any more time on.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll definitely come back to it. This is working though, so anytime I change any of these 3 fields, we're actually out there and we're running the logic. And yeah, so there we go. So what we need to do now is, instead of throwing up an alert box, we need to do 2 things. And I have to do these 2 things 3 times because of these 3 separate cases now. But
at this point, let's just pick one of them and then work it to completion in that one.
Yeah, that's good. So what we want to do is we want to say that, see, this isn't returning enough info in order to be as granular as we really want. Because if there's something, you know what, let's just do this. For now, we're going to add a warning message. And so we're going to say gform.add error message.
Not enough info in the fact that you need to be able to distinguish between open zone and no open zone.
Yeah. So the only thing we can really distinguish now is if we've got both zones taken, but we can't tell if there's not a session in one of the zones, but there is in the other. So, and I don't really know. I mean, the only reason we'd want that info, the vision I had was that if we had a session in zone A, that we would default the zone to zone B. But, that's a nice to have, but we would have to return more information with our glide Ajax script include. So if we get there, we'll come to it, but I just want to get this part done. Is already a session.
Here's a way we could do that. That might make sense would be if we returned JSON, a little JSON array of the open zones, which would be either A and B, A or one of A or B, or empty.
Right.
Trying to think of the thing that would be able to have the most generic logic possible, and that might be it.
Yeah, that probably wouldn't be too bad. And I want to limit it to 1 call. So, I mean, we could obviously brute force this and say, let's go out there and have another check that determines if there's something, in the other zone. But that just gets into multiple calls, and that's not helpful. One thing I just want to note here, if you're doing this kind of thing, always remember to clear your messages. Otherwise, you're going to have this expanding list of error messages at the top every time you change the value. So let's see if this works. So Tuesday at 9. And of course, that's not going to be an issue. Oh, this isn't actually working yet. It's still alerting. Oh, it's because I... All right. I'm just going to copy this into the other 2 to not go crazy. Horrible. So Tuesday, 9 a.m. And that's interesting. So we're saying that there's already a session scheduled at this time, but it's because we're looking for an empty zone. Huh. 9:30. So why is it saying that?
Yeah, I think that's not correct.
Yeah, there's something definitely wrong there. So let's take a look at, first, let's just make sure we don't have any errors. And it doesn't look like we do. Just clear out our console really quick. Move that over. That a little smaller. There we go.
Go ahead and dismiss your like after you get the first one.
Yeah, I'll close that.
Just to make sure that we're generating a new one.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, I know why. It's because I'm not doing an if condition. I just I did the worst thing possible. I just said every time we run this, we're going to add this error message. That's not what we wanted. So if answer equals, and I think this is a string. I'm fairly confident that this is a string. Then we're going to do this.
But wouldn't JavaScript coercion, like if you just did if answer, shouldn't true evaluate the string true also evaluate to true?
The string true will evaluate to true, but the string false will also evaluate to true.
Oh, okay.
So then we're in a bad state again. And I think this will do it. This is, let's see, this is on the day changes, so we can experiment with this just on the day change. So let's reload again. And let's set these other two values, which are obviously going to put the message up there. But now when we do the day, there we go. Now it's looking better.
We've got a suggestion to clear the values in the onload, which is probably a...
Clear the values in the onload. So in the onload, though, so the onload is only going to happen when you first open the record. And at that point, the error message is not going to be there, since the error message will only show up after we've started manipulating values, after which we will no longer trigger the onload. So what I need to do is I'm just going to copy this to the other two because I'm having too much of a difficult time figuring out which one is firing when. Right. We are proving very quickly why we need the other thing. a better solution to that. Let's go to zone changes, do the same thing. See, even the simplest things can get a little interesting at times. So now we'll do 9 a.m. Nothing there yet. At time slot B. Now we'll go to test event. Now it comes up. So it's in both A and B on the test event at 9 o'clock. At 9:30, it's in B. Or I'm sorry, it's in A, but it's not in B. So yeah, that's working. That is working. So, so I think that's, that's minimum viable product. I think that works. That at least gives us the person filling this thing out a heads up that, hey, there's already a session scheduled at this time. I'm going to just add one more thing to that error message. It says in both zones. I'm not going to go update the other two right now. I will update the other two after we're no longer live because it's not useful for anybody to watch. But there we go. So we've got our validation. Let me just take a look at our list of things to do. So the next thing I want to do is I would like to invalidate these things. So after the time has passed, I want to go in there and say, basically deactivate every event that has already occurred. Because what's going to happen is when people go out to the Unconference Meetup group, let me just pull that back up again. You'll notice that this stuff comes up to the top. And so whatever the next thing is always going to be at the top. When you actually drill into the group, you can see everything that's listed. But if you don't drill into the group, whatever is at the top is what they're going to see. And so as these things pass, I want to expire them, which will then in turn deactivate and then basically update the description. So this should actually be really easy. This one should only take a minute because what we need to do is we need to add an active checkbox.
Tell you what, why don't we do this and then call it good for this week? Because we're at 45 minutes right now. I think this probably leave us not enough time to tackle the next thing if we do.
Yeah, no, I'm totally good with that. So we'll add our active, true or false. Got our field. Just make sure that we go and let me do this. I like the form layout a little bit better for what I'm doing here. So let's go into the dictionary. And I want to say that the default value is true. So when this thing is first created, it's going to be true. And then we can go in there later and deactivate it. And then what I want to do is I want to determine. So let's think about this. The logic to do this is going to involve some date math. You know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to update our description builder to not take into account the active checkbox. I'm not going to try to do the date math in our remaining 15 minutes. Because as we know, date math is never fun.
So we'll just manually unclick them and call that good.
For now, yep, for today. And then either next time or
figure that logic out on our own. And
yeah, because what I'll probably do is I'll probably just bring in moment.js so I can come in there and I can come up with some date comparison to determine what has occurred and what hasn't. But I just don't want to think about that right now. It's too late on a Friday for my brain to think about date math. So our description builder is here. This is what we built last week. And, this is going to be really, really, really simple. So all we have to do is say gr.addQuery. Well, gr session.addQuery. And
you might even be able to go shorter.
Add
active query.
Yeah.
Now, I'm assuming, I don't know this for a fact, because I think typically you use that with like a task-based thing. But the fact that you have a field named active may be enough to make it, because I think what that's going to do is, in the SQL, just generate is active, basically active equals true.
I think you're right. And that's really cool because that's a nice sort of built-in piece of functionality if we can take advantage of it. So let's find out. So let's go out here and, whoops, that's not what I wanted. I don't want studio, I want sessions. So here's our sessions. And I'm going to first go out here and actually make active true on all of these. And interestingly enough, that actually we'll see if it clears anything out. It probably won't. Okay. So now let's take the one from Bob and we'll make that false. And let's see what happens. Yeah, it goes away. There we go.
Boom.
So add active query does work. So if you've got a field called active, you can use add active query.
I didn't know for a fact that was going to work. I was just thought that
it's a good guess. It's a good guess. And I wonder if that works for non-scoped apps when you have like a U_ field, because that's one of the interesting things about scoped apps is you don't have these U_ prefixes. So we're able to take advantage of it. You might not be able to take advantage of that in a global app, but I'm just speculating there. So so at this point, the rest of the stuff that I want to do, just we're not going to get into it today, but this is really close to where it needs to be. I've actually moved away from this idea that it's going to be a public form because only staffers are going to be filling this thing out. So people will actually log into the interface to log in on this iPad. And then that also means that I can give them access to things like the menus and whatnot. So we didn't get into this today, but I'll test this out in the actual ServiceNow mobile app and see what it looks like in the mobile app and stuff like that. The logic that I'll work on after this, now that we've got the active checkbox, is I'll do that date comparison and say, hey, let's look for anything that's happened in the past. And then let's see, what else do I have? I've got the zone dropdown. I've got the description generator updated. The stretch goal that I have, and I don't know if this is going to happen, I'm just throwing it out there, is I would love to say that if somebody sends out a photo tweet with the CreatorCon and Unconference hashtags, that we go out there and we actually post the photo to this event page. Not going to happen today, obviously, but that's what I hope to do. Don't know if we'll get into that in live coding happy hour. Maybe we will, but I think this is pretty much close to where we need it to be.
So how about this so our plan is to bring on Jason McKee if he's onable next time. And we could maybe do a rundown of CreatorCon for a little bit of time. And then if we have any remaining time, then we can try to do that. We can kind of mop up whatever else we haven't done on this. That might actually be a fun one. So we maybe do that. And if somehow we blaze through that, we can kind of go to the backlog of whatever else isn't done. Although considering that will be the Friday before CreatorCon, that's awfully late. It may be too late. Yeah, we may already have had to have finished it before then. So
I think there'll be a code freeze before that time. So this thing's going to be locked in.
We could kind of, well, we're already going to be kind of defining the conventions that way anyway. We may, it may be more of a code demonstration, a code walkthrough than an actual generating the code that time.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to be fair, that particular use case, it involves dealing with the Twitter API, which involves OAuth. And Twitter actually has two kinds of OAuth that they make you use depending on which API you're calling. The other thing it involves is the Meetup.com photo APIs require you to send a URL encoded. No, I'm sorry. It's a form multi-part request, which ServiceNow doesn't support by default. So part of making that happen would be proxying the photo post through something that can accept a binary and then turn it into a multi-part request.
Yeah.
Neither of those are trivial. I don't think it's a huge thing, but probably not a live coding happy hour. We have 45 minutes thing. That's just a recipe for failure. But a lot of people are always dealing with these multi-part form issues, so it might still be interesting to at least review it if I can get it to work. So
we definitely we have our strengths and interests and kind of different things that we do. Yeah, like you are, basically you have de facto made yourself the OAuth guy, right?
Fortunately or unfortunately,
but when you say all that stuff, that just kind of makes me itchy. Like the moment math and all that, like some of that other stuff, I love that stuff. It just makes me happy even just using it. But doing this stuff, honestly, is not would not be a thing that I relish approaching. So.
See, we're so absolutely opposite in that way. Yeah, this is where moment math, that's all yours. I'll take the OAuth stuff. I'm happy to do it. I guess that's why we work well together. So
cool. All right. So I did actually. I went into Untapped just a minute ago, and I do have a rating for this, and I think that was from 2 weeks ago. So 4.0.
This is a solid 4. I think it's the same thing I had whenever it was, but it's a good beer.
I'm also mixing this with my Starbucks Americano, which is probably a 3.5.
Starbucks Americano, really that high for Starbucks?
Yeah, I don't hate on the Starbucks the way some do. All right, so I think that's it. As we said, in 2 weeks we'll be back, doing our CreatorCon preview, and boy, thank you all for joining. Thank you, Midun. Thank you, Jace. Thank you, Tariq. Everybody else who has watched or watched any portion of this, or if you watch later. And we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good weekend.